Another exciting type of sculpture is installation. And you find a lot of contemporary artists use installation work. So if you go to a museum, this is an approach you're probably seeing quite a bit of. And the term itself comes from the idea of installing something. So you're literally installing something inside a museum space. So these are usually room-sized works. They're usually fairly large pieces as far as their scale and their size. And just to show you some artists, this is Yayoi Kusama. And I've always appreciated her work. She does a lot of these infinity rooms where she plays with perception. What is the space really? And if you know anything about Kusuma's background, she actually went in and out of mental institutions throughout her whole life. So many people say that perhaps she sees the world a little bit differently than the rest of us, which leads to these type of installations that she does. Another personal favorite is Damien Hirst, and he's part of the Young British Artists, or the YBAs, who came to prominence in the 90s. And I was lucky enough to see a lot of his pieces while traveling in London back when I was in college. And I've always been a fan of the physical impossibility of death in the mind of someone living. He does a lot of works where he takes animals, taxidermied animals, preserved animals, and he places them in these formaldehyde bins or vats or whatever you want to call them, I guess. And there's something about them that I've always found elegant and stark and shocking and beautiful, but yet also off-putting. And for me, this is somewhat art that I enjoy. So I've always found this sort of clinical coldness about them to be rather intriguing. Here's some other pieces that he's done, like Love's Paradox or Cock and Bull. Um, there's also something humorous about them sometimes, as far as the approach is concerned. Another artist who does installation that I enjoy is Sarah Su, and this is the one that shows up in your book, which is Corner Plot. And it plays off her aesthetic, which is this idea of using everyday materials to create installations. Here, though, what's fun about this installation is she creates this, illusion of something embedded in the concrete on a city street in New York. And you can get down in there and kind of look in the window and almost feel like there's this whole other building kind of hidden right beneath the street of New York. So it gives off this interesting type of effect. But these are the kind of work she normally does, where they're again, large room-sized pieces, playing with all these everyday materials and creating these immersive environments that, again, to me are somewhat whimsical and fun and beautiful and silly and strange and colorful. And there's something visually arresting about them. She uses a lot of trash. She uses a lot of debris from our lives. I also think they're somewhat of a commentary on consumerism and sort of, this rampant consumerism where stuff just gets thrown out and thrown out. And, we have a lot of cheap garbage we buy. So again, that's just a theory I often have about the pieces as well. They're almost like toys, but yet not. And they're almost like model cities, but then not. Again, to me, they operate in a whole lot of different ways and can be, discussed in a whole lot of different ways too. Another installation artist I quite enjoy is Cilda Morales, and this is a Brazilian artist, and he does a lot of works dealing with like politics, so danger, governmental perceptions. And I love this work called Through, and going through is like the last thing you can do because everything here is dangerous and wants to keep you out. So it's kind of a comical kind of idea. But again, for someone who deals with a lot of political things in his work, political ideas, it could be a commentary on how, we're often not allowed to go through. We're kept out by rules, by bureaucracy, whatnot. Here's a larger shot of the work. You notice that some of the barriers are real and some are implied, like the velvet rope, for instance. The velvet rope is, if you think about it, a very implied barrier, but we all respect it. So it's, again, something to consider. This is Morales' work, How to Build Cathedrals, where he has this almost funereal kind of feel with the black drapes. And you have the ceiling is made of bones. The floor is coins. And then connecting them is this tower, this ladder of communion wafers. And you might say, well, how are bones, coins, and communion wafers all linked together? The way I sort of explore it is he's talking about how to build cathedrals. He's dealing with the legacy of Catholicism that was brought to these colonized countries like Brazil, and is considering the impact, right, of what happens when indigenous people are colonized by the outsider, right? What occurs to them. And he says here that, there's a lot of bloodshed, perhaps. There's a lot of wealth that changes hands. There's a lot of religious customs that are brought and discarded. So it's an interesting piece in its own right. This is Doho Soo, and he is an artist who works with this idea of space. Again, a Korean artist who had to sort of adjust to American living spaces. And so he talks about how early on in his career, he actually made replicas of Korean homes, like this one here, his Seoul home. And he liked to put it up wherever he lived, made out of fabric. He liked to put it up in the spaces he was living in because he said it made him feel like he was at home, that he could understand the space better. Because if you've ever been in an Asian space, it's very different than a Western space. We use our spaces very, very differently. Asians, for instance, they like open spaces that can be separated out by like fusama or sliding walls. They don't understand having all these little distinct rooms like Americans have, for instance. They're like, what, why? That seems like a waste of space to them. So they just use space differently. We use space differently. And so he was meditating on that. And so then he started to make all these type of fabric kind of replicas of houses. And it's like these ghost homes you're looking at. This is a recent piece he did at the Contemporary Museum of Art in Seoul, in Korea, where he put this traditional house inside of it, like a more contemporary modern house. And there's kind of the past and the present, kind of on top of one another. So you're looking at it through this kind of mixture, right, of ideas. Some other works he's done. This one kind of deals with, who's actually celebrated at the end of the day. Or, he's Korean, right? So is your government for you or against you? A piece I've always loved of his, Sum 1. It's made out of dog tags. In Korea, military service is part of like what you do as a citizen. So these dog tags represent their community. And so he made this traditional kind of robe, but it's made out of all the dog tags together. So literally the sum become the one. It's a beautiful, beautiful work. And again, the message is quite beautiful, I think, as well.